Good morning, everybody. Sorry, I don't even know why I said good morning. I'm probably because I'm recording this in the morning. But anyway, unfortunately, we ended up having a little bit of a technical issue when recording our latest episode. So therefore, we did end up unfortunately losing the first half of this episode. So I'm just here to break it down for you guys so that way you're not confused as to what you're listening to. So this week, instead of doing a traditional case or a legend, like we typically would take the whole hour to really discuss and deep dive one specific topic, I presented a bunch of mini little topics. So I brought together around maybe 20 or so episode or little stories that everybody can enjoy. So I am gonna now read a couple to you simply because, like I said, we did lose the first half of our podcast, but we still obviously want to produce content for you guys, so that is why I am on here telling you a little story. For starters, I wish Mariah could get her real raw reaction, but to start, this is just a personal little thing, is I lost Clyde, my fish, and now I only have 2 guppies left that are named Bonnie. They're the last 2 standing, the last 2 stronghold. I discovered Clyde's body or his little fish body in our little, I have a bikini bottom themed aquarium, and he was in one of the little bikini bottom barrels that I got. So very sad. And it appeared that the guppies either ate him a little bit because there are little shards of his skin all over the tank. So very sad, and that essentially means that I need to clean the tank. Anyway, so that's something I did want to bring to the table because I did think that it was kind of a story, and Mariah wanted me to bring that up. I'm sorry to everybody that you couldn't hear the original audio, but like always, we welcome you to Naturally Off Topic, a podcast where we discuss legends, theories, crimes, and more. And today I'm going to start as your host, Megan, and later on you will be introduced to Mariah, who will also be in this episode as well. So, from CIA experiments to spooky science mishaps, there's a lot of interesting stories, so buckle up and listen up. The first one I would like to leave you with is the story of Troy Leon Gregg. Let me tell you a story about a man whose name should have been forgotten, but instead he made history. Troy Leon Gregg was a convicted murderer, the first in U.S. history whose death sentence was upheld by the Supreme Court after a pivotal legal battle that reshaped the American justice system. But I'll talk about that in a few minutes. But let's get back to 1973, where Gregg and an accomplice, Dennis Weaver, were hitchhiking where they picked up a man named Fred Edward Simons and another man named Bob Durwood Moore. Gregg and his accomplice, Dennis Weaver, they were hitchhiking and they were picked up by Fred and Bob. Sorry, they weren't the ones doing the picking up. It was Fred and Bob who picked up Gregg and his accomplice. But instead of thanking them for the ride, Gregg shot and killed both men, robbed them, and stole their car. Then, fast forward to 1980, Gregg was on death row at Georgia State Prison in Reidsville. But just one day before his scheduled execution, he did the unthinkable. Along with 3 other inmates, he orchestrated the first ever death row escape in Georgia history. They altered their prison uniforms to resemble correctional office gear, sawed through their cell bars and windows, and climbed down a fire escape. And because no great prison escape is ever complete without the help from the outside, obviously one of the escapees already had a getaway car waiting in the visitor's lot. The prison didn't even realize they were gone until Gregg himself called a newspaper to explain why they had escaped. But sadly, his freedom did not last very long. That same night, his body was found floating in the Catawba River. The story behind his death, you may ask? Very messy, violent, and mysterious because there are a few different claims, but in this one that I'm covering, one version claims he got drunk in a biker bar, assaulted a waitress, and was killed by a local who dumped his body behind the bar. Another version says he got into a deadly fight with fellow escapee Timothy McQuaddale and a biker gang member named James Cecil Horn. The autopsy revealed Greg was suffocated to death, murdered during his very first night of freedom, and yet his story left behind even more chaos. So, like I said, we were going to go back to that pivotal moment where he was put on death row. So his original trial was the first major test after Furman versus Georgia, a 1972 Supreme Court ruling that paused all executions in the U.S., calling the death penalty a cruel and unusual punishment. That case forced states to rewrite how capital punishment was applied, making Gregg the first sentence under these new laws. The ruling, Gregg versus Georgia, became a landmark decision that allowed executions to resume in America. Troy Leon Gregg wasn't just a killer, he became a precedent. So, interesting little story here, just to break it down. You've got the irony of a death row inmate who puts all that effort into literally escaping prison to just simply die that night. So, and then you have the law, so that Furman versus Georgia in 1972, literally 1 year before Gregg committed this crime, there was a passing of a law. So why did Georgia uphold this law? According to them, they did feel that Gregg's justification to be put on death row was justified. And I think because all of this, he ended up basically making the death penalty legal again. So we hope you enjoy that next episode, or next little story. Next one I want to leave you with is the invoice that ended a childhood. Ernest Thompson Seton. And again, I wish Mariah was here because she specifically said she remembered seeing this story at one point. So I'm actually very excited to see if she listens to this again and if she'll have the same reaction. So anyway, Ernest Thompson Sutton was born Ernest Evan Thompson in 1860 in England. He moved to Canada with his family as a child. He grew up mostly in Toronto, where he fell in love with nature, art, and animals, a passion that would go on to shape his legacy and one we will talk about a little later on. He would later become an acclaimed wildlife artist, author, and pioneer in nature-based education, just to give you a little bit of a back story there. But he also, and I guess I will also tell you that he founded the Boy Scouts of America. So pretty exciting stuff. Which is kind of funny if you think about it. He moved to Canada and he opened the Boy Scouts of America. So anyway, ironic. In 1902, he started the Woodcraft Indians, a group that would evolve into the Woodcraft League of America, leaving the groundwork for how millions of young people would learn survival skills, respect for the environment, and character development. But let's get back to this story other than his many successes. On his 21st birthday, his father coldly handed over a list of every single cost incurred in raising him. Food, clothes, doctor bills, schooling, and more. It was a detailed financial ledger of childhood, priced and itemized like a business expense, down to literally his delivery costs in the hospital. Whether he managed to pay the bill or not kind of remains debated. Some say he did, some say he didn't. But what's clear is that he never spoke to his father again. He left the house, found work, and never looked back. And why does this matter? Because he ended up spending his entire life teaching kids. So he turned a fractured childhood into a legacy of empowerment. Like I said, we're going to talk a little bit about it Later on, he invented, the Boy Scouts of America and pioneered several nature books and started so many things. So it shows a resilient person can come out of the ashes, a phoenix out of the ashes, right? And we see it here. We did have a wonderful guest on our podcast back in incognito days who talked about emancipation from her parents. I'm not 100% sure if that episode is still live as we fully transition to our naturally off-topic era. I do believe I left it. So if you ever want to listen to that one, you can definitely find it on our podcast. But that was definitely very interesting. A very interesting story to talk about. All right, people, we're going to continue on with these stories. This one is called The Man Who Died to Escape Prison, Then Did It Again. In early 1998, a frail, emancipated inmate was transferred from a Texas prison to hospice. His medical records claimed he was dying of HIV/AIDS. The end was near. A few weeks later, a death certificate arrived, and Stephen J. Russell was dead. Except, actually, he wasn't. Shortly after authorities arrested Russell, alive and absolutely not dying, living in Florida, it turns out that he had used laxatives to lose a ton of weight, then forged medical documents to claim he had HIV. His terminal condition earned him a transfer to hospice, where thanks to low security, he was able to walk right out of the door. Then came the masterstroke. He mailed in a fake death certificate claiming his own demise. At first it worked, but officials did start to get suspicious and launched a full-blown manhunt, and they caught him again. This escape, however, wasn't his first. Russell had previously been in prison for embezzling over $800,000, escaping multiple times through various wild cons, including impersonating a judge and a CFO. His final conviction, however, did land him 144 years in prison, 99 for his escape and 45 for his fraud. And even though none of his crimes were violent, he was kept in solitary confinement for 23 hours a day. If he's still alive, we don't know. So if you're interested in this story, like I said, it's a little small one. So you can do some deep diving if you are interested. Another one is, the year was 2004. Armstrong, a notoriously private and publicly shy, has been getting his hair cut regularly at the Merrick's Barbershop in Lebanon, Ohio. And if any of you do not remember who Neil Armstrong was, he was the one who walked on the moon. He, being Armstrong, found out something wild. His barber had actually saved clippings of his hair from the floor and sold them for $3,000. I mean, and in this case, yeah, it was not just anybody, it was Neil Armstrong. But the buyer, John Reznikoff, a collector who literally holds the Guinness World Record for largest collection of historical celebrity hair, thinking like Abraham Lincoln, Marilyn Monroe, Napoleon. But Armstrong, he actually was not very impressed. He actually had his barber, Marks, get the hair back, and Reznikoff actually refused. So Armstrong's legal team sent a letter, return the hair or donate the $3,000 to charity of Neil's choosing and pay the legal fees. The legal threat cited an obscure Ohio law protecting the rights of public figures. But the damage was done. Armstrong eventually stopped going to the shop, and the man who once walked on the moon left very down to earth and very pissed. So, thought that was kind of crazy. Here's another crazy one for you. After Nazi Germany invaded France, some women actually collaborated. Others, they just fell in love. The term horizontal collaboration was coined to describe women who occupied France who had romantic or sexual relationships with German soldiers during World War II. Whether it was out of love, survival, coercion, or just bad timing, thousands of French women actually became involved with the enemy, being the Nazis. And after the war, the country actually wanted revenge. When France was liberated, these women were publicly punished. In town squares, they were dragged out and had their heads shaved in front of crowds, branded as traitors, humiliated, and sometimes attacked. They became known as femmes tondues, the shaven women. I'm assuming that's in French. The irony, though, in many cases, these women hadn't been lovers at all. They were maids, nurses, or professionals who worked with the Germans out of necessity, but the perception was punishment. Historians estimate 200,000 babies were born to German soldiers and French mothers during the war. Decades later, many of these children were offered German citizenship, finally acknowledged as a product of complicated and often a very painful history. You know, this kind of reminds me of the Salem witch trials, right? Like, you know, anyone who's different or has a different view outside of what's considered societal standard norms, right? But unfortunately, in this case, you know, it's still not, you know, crazy. So, anyway, I don't want to keep too much of your time. I wanted to give you a few crazy stories to start off this episode, so that way you can go back and also enjoy the rest of the episode. But something that I didn't get to do completely in this episode, which I will start here, and then you will also hear, like I said, the rest of the episode with more crazy stories. But I created this flash round, which are a little bit even shorter stories than what I was just giving you, but also tells a little bit of fact. So, coffin birth, for example, is a rare phenomenon when a deceased pregnant woman during decomposition can expel the fetus during gas buildup. It is terrifying, and I actually saw a photo of a man at a funeral where this happened, and it's not pretty. Essentially, you know, if a woman dies pregnant, the child, if it's not fully developed, obviously would pass as well, which is tragic in its own right. But, you know, no one ever really thinks about what happens to your body, you know, after it dies. And this is unfortunately something that can happen. Here's another crazy one. Third man syndrome. Ever feel like someone's watching you, but there's no one there? In life or death situations, people have actually reported an unseen presence guiding them or comforting them. It's called the third man factor, and it's one of psychology's most mysterious phenomenons. So, an example of this would be if you were trapped, like, on Mount Everest. I think there were, like, times where people, they survived, but they said in which after, you know, being in this state of panic and knowing that there's a chance they could die, whether it's their subconscious or there really is someone on the other side offering advice, that's what people are saying they hear. Arson birds. So in Australia, which why are we not surprised, because Australia is home to all the craziest animals out there, black kites, also known as firehawks, have been seen picking up burning sticks and intentionally dropping them in new areas to start fires and flush out prey. Could you imagine that? Like, there's just like a fire somewhere, just casually, like, you know, like a forest fire, and then you see a bird with like burning sticks in its mouth, like flying over another area and causing more fire. Like, that's fucking terrifying. Oh my god. But anyway, we hope you enjoyed this first beginning of it. We're going to continue on with a great another batch of stories coming up shortly, so we hope you continue on with this journey with us.
So, getting back into these lovely, lovely little stories, the next one is called The Invoice That Ended a Childhood, Ernest Thompson. So, Ernest Thompson, a man of meager means, turned 21. His father handed him a bill, not a gift, not a speech, a literal, itemized invoice of everything it had cost to raise him, right down to the doctor who delivered him at birth. But
I feel like I've heard this one.
You have or have not?
I feel like I have.
Ooh, we love that. So, Satan, he was actually born. So if you have heard it, he was actually born as Ernest Evan Thompson in 1860 in England. Let me know if this is ringing any bells. He moved to Canada with his family as a child. He grew up mostly in Toronto, where he fell in love with nature, art, animals. That ended up being a big part of his legacy later in his life. He would later become a acclaimed wildlife artist and author, so maybe that's where you could have heard the story. So, but anyway, he actually, fun fact, started the Boy Scouts of America. But anyway, back to the actual story. So his father, like I said, he coldly handed over this list of every single cost incurred in raising him: food, clothes, doctors, billing, schooling, all that jazz. It was a detailed financial ledger of childhood, priced and itemized like almost like a business expense. And it was as for Satan. Whether he managed to pay the bill or not remains debated.
Why do you keep saying Satan?
Seton. Sorry, I'm pronouncing his last name.
I was like, is that his name?
Seton.
Okay.
Seton. Seton.
Okay.
Sorry.
Pretty close.
I mean, I guess I said. Anyway. But it's still debated whether he actually paid it or not. But long story short, he never spoke to his father again. He left the house, he found work, and he never looked back. So... And why? I know this, why does this matter? But he spent his life after leaving his horrible childhood teaching kids the value of self-resilience, imagination, and kindness, things that his father never gave him. But I wanted to bring this in because I just felt that, isn't that so crazy? You choose, because, I'm sorry, you don't always choose to have children, but you choose to have sex. And you know the risk when having sex can produce children. So, take responsibility, dude, and don't charge your kids.
I think that why it sounds familiar is because I feel like I've heard of many different parents doing this.
So what is your take? What are your thoughts on that? And that's actually why I wanted to bring it up.
No, but I you would think that this was the only ever case about this, but
I believe there's more. I was
watching Real Housewives. Don't judge.
No, we love trash
I was
TV.
watching Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. Don't judge on that. And one of the women said that her father, who was having to go to, maybe I'm misremembering, but I'm fairly sure he said, you owe me for this, and it was all the childhood expenses, and she was like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Parents hold it over their head.
Right, but
I think we're lagging a bit.
Oh, yeah, I think you're right. But, no, I'm totally with you. I think that's so fucked. You choose to have a kid, you're not going to charge them. You made that choice. On the other side, then there's the people that are like, I didn't ask to be born.
Because there's inflation.
Yeah, I did not. I'm turning 28 this year, and my dad had me at 28. And the concept of having a child right now, I know you're ready for that, and you're that journey. I could not imagine that for my own life right now. And I'm so proud of you for being ready for that soon, and I'm so excited to be an aunt. It's so scary being an adult.
My mom was 24.
Your mom was 24?
Yeah.
Wow, 24. That's kind of crazy.
I'd have a 4-year-old right now.
No, that's crazy. Alrighty, so continuing on. Sorry, I don't know why I developed a makeshift British accent there. This one's kind of funny.
As you do.
As I do, naturally. This one is an April Fool's special, Mariah. And the deal was, bring your car and the ad to the dealership and you'll walk out with a brand new BMW. But this was a New Zealand Herald ran a front page ad for BMW with that headline. Bring in walk into the dealership with this ad in your car and we'll give you a new one. But you want to know what was funny? It went out on April Fool's Day. So who's going to believe?
Oh no.
So Tiana Marsh, she rolled up at the dealership at 5:30 in the morning in a beat-up 15-year-old station wagon holding the paper in hand. And guess what? She won! Because the dealership handed over they handed over the keys to a brand new BMW worth nearly, according to translation from New Zealand forms to US, $50,000. Oh, sorry, $37,000 worth. Isn't that crazy?
They just handed it over like that?
And they had a custom plate that read "No Fool." So the sales manager,
They just handed it over like that?
Well, so the sales manager, it was part of the fun, but nobody really thought that anyone would actually show up and do it. Like, they were gonna do it, like, if somebody truly showed up, but they just were like...
Really?
Yeah. So the woman walked away with a $37,000 value BMW. I fact-check it.
So many people would have fucking done that.
But, like, she was, like, the only one that showed up. She rolled up at 5:30 in the morning.
That's crazy.
I know. But, like,
was
good
it like
for her.
if you're the first person to do that?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it was. Ugh, so good.
Damn.
I know. So anyway, we have our next story, the vanished Boeing 727. Mariah loves a good disappearing airplane. She was the one back in our incognito days.
Don't even get me started with a Boeing airplane.
I was going to say, back in our incognito days, you were...
It was in the first episode of our naturally... Oh my god.
Our incognito days.
Oh my god, the lagging is fucking killing. No, it wasn't. It was the first episode we did of Naturally Off Topic, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, okay. I thought it was when we were incognito. Did we? We talked about the Malaysian... Was it the Malaysian Airlines?
Malaysian was incognito, yeah.
Oh. Oh, yeah, but we talked... Oh, Amelia Earhart. I see what you're saying. Yep, I'm catching the drift.
Yeah. But yes, I am the airplane girl.
So you might actually like this one. So it's May 25th, 2023, just before the sunset at Quanto de Ferrovino Airport in Ludanda, Angola. A massive Boeing 727, once part of an American's fleet, had been sitting abandoned. It was for over a year. Unpaid, forgotten. It had racked up more than $4 million in airport fees and was actually in the process of being repossessed for a Nigerian airline. And then it disappeared. Naturally, out of thin air. So that evening, one man named Ben Padilla, a flight engineer and pilot from the U.S., and another man, John Mutantu, a mechanic from the Republic of Congo. They were neither of them were ever like certified to fly this 727 solo, according to the airport staff after the fact. But the plane they began to taxi. No lights, no communication, no clearance. It moved right across the sky and suddenly just took right off over the Atlantic Ocean. And the plane itself had been filled with over 14,000 gallons of fuel, which means it had enough fuel to travel up to 1,500 miles. So there was no... And so after this plane disappeared, these two men, they got on the plane and just drove it off, which, to me, how the fuck do two men fucking casually go on a plane and disappear? But essentially, they said that...
Hey, Amelia did.
You're not wrong, but, it was just it was 2003, though. It was post, 9/11 times. And
that's true.
It was post, where, a plane sitting
That's like Malaysian again.
Yeah, exactly. Like a plane just like casually disappearing into thin air, like or just taking off and then disappearing was just very like weird because there was no crash, there was no distress calls. Like this plane just like went like exactly like Amelia Earhart, just went away. And some actually speculated that Padella, one of the guys, was coerced or like forced to do it because they said that he was like a good human on this plane, like to work at the airport and whatnot. But as of today, no one actually really knows where the plane is. There was speculation that it was spotted in Papua New Guinea, but the U.S. State Department actually dismissed it. But I did
My
find
God, that's where fucking Amelia went.
Yep. So something about Papua New Guinea is kind of fucked.
That's where we lost Miss Amelia.
Yeah. Yep. All right. So so clearly don't go to Papua New Guinea. Also, that's where Jonestown happened. I've been really into like crime books. All right. Are you ready, Mariah, for the next story?
I'm trying not to say much because my thing keeps lagging so hard that.
Dude, I know, I get it. Mine is too. I'll just go through a few more stories that I think are gonna really tickle your pickle, and then we'll call it a day. So, next one is called the Ice Cream Wars.
Quiet, that's why.
Yeah. So the next one's called the Ice Cream Wars. So this is actually kind of funny because like literally, so it wasn't about ice cream, it was about drugs. So it was a turf war where people literally rented out ice cream trucks to sell drugs. And it's kind of funny because little innocent kids are trying to go up and get ice cream, and it's actually like, JK, get the fuck out of here. So let's kind of backtrack a little bit. Let's go to East End, Glasgow in 1984. Ice cream vans were a stable part of the community, and they sold lots of treats to kids, stopped in the neighborhood, a lot of great things, but it was also a great criminal enterprise. They were distributing drugs and stolen goods, and rival gangs began to fight over territory. Routes became turf, vans were raided, windows were shot out with shotguns, drivers were threatened if they didn't comply. And on April 16th, 1984, 18-year-old Andrew Fatboy Doyle, Fat Boy, was a driver for the Marchetti...
Fat Boy?
Yep, his name was Fat Boy. Andrew Fatboy Doyle.
Nice.
Yep. He was a driver for the Marchetti Ice Cream Company. That literally already sounds like a mafia name. But he refused to play along, and he wouldn't deal the drugs on his route because he wanted to sell that hard-earnest ice cream. And that decision actually nearly got him killed when someone shot through his van's windshield in an early morning. But he didn't back down, so they planned something worse. At 2 a.m., someone doused the outside door of the top floor flat where Andrew lived with his family in petrol and set it on fire. Inside, Doyle's family was sleeping. There were 9 people in the flat, including a toddler. The blaze took 6 lives, including James Doyle, the father, Christina Heron, 25, his daughter, Mark, 18-month-old grandson, and 3 sons, James, Andrew, and Tony. Only 3 people actually escaped alive, and this wasn't just a tragic fire, it was an intentional mass murder. So, you think it all starts with Ice Cream Man, but it just kind of goes to show that, people suck, I guess, is really what I was getting at.
Yeah.
In 1995, MacArthur Wheeler rubbed lemon juice on his face and robbed 2 banks. Why? because he thought it made him invisible to cameras. His logic was that lemon juice is used as invisible ink, so naturally, if you smear it on your face, surveillance. I mean, yeah, totally, because surveillance cameras can't see you if you do it. But unfortunately, that he was caught, and his Wheeler and his accomplice, they tried to rob two banks in Pittsburgh, without masks, not even sunglasses, and the surveillance ended up being blasted on the news, and he got arrested. Hours later, when he was arrested, he said, "But I wore the lemon juice."
That is so funny.
Here's another little crazy one for you.
I'm team him.
I know. So, long story short, everyone put lemon juice on your face and you'll go invisible.
Yes.
So, here's another crazy one. Two twins separated at birth in 1940, raised apart. They were reunited at 39 years of age, and their lives were nearly identical. Both of them were named Jim by their respected adopted families. Both had dogs named Toy. Both loved math and woodworking. Both married a woman named Linda, divorced and remarried Betty's. Both named their sons James Allen, and both drove Chevys.
Shut the fuck up.
They also both were heavy smokers, and they both vacationed in Florida. And when they finally met, scientists had to jump on their case, and their brain scans, personalities, even heart rates were nearly identical. Could you imagine that? Like having a long lost twin that you never knew existed, and you guys are literally the same person?
No, that's fucking crazy.
I know. Here's another crazy one for you. You're going to be like, why are people crazy? But why aren't people crazy? In 2010, Tokyo officials discovered the oldest man alive had actually been dead for 30 years. So Sagon Kato, he was born in 1899, and he was supposedly alive at 111 years old until officials tried to visit him for respect for the aged day. His family said he was becoming a Buddhist mummy. In reality, he actually had already died. So this was in 2010 where the state officials wanted to visit him. He had actually died in 1978, and his family had hidden the body and continued collecting nearly $118,000 in pension money. And
oh my god, I heard of that before, actually.
Really?
Like,
so crazy?
People using, like, Social Security when they're dead.
Yes. Oh, there was another story I heard of a woman.
He was dead, like, for a long-ass time.
Yeah, he died in 1978, and, like, the Japanese officials were like, oh, in 2010, we want to visit him, because he's going to be officially 111. Like, that's so old.
The oldest man to ever live. They're like, nah, Jerry's been dead for 10 years.
Yeah.
More than 10 years.
No, literally. Oh, here's a good one. So, in 2023, officials found over 500 pounds of cooked pasta dumped in the woods of New Jersey. No one knows why. It was all spaghetti, macaroni, noodles. They were all mysteriously softened by the rain and were found by a stream in Old Bridge. Residents were baffled.
Be on a diet.
Huh?
You and I'm supposed to be on a diet.
Literally. But it was like, if you look up pictures, like, if you look up, like, New Jersey, like, pasta mystery, it's actually hilarious. Because, like, there's, like...
Not the New Jersey pasta mystery.
It is, like, just pounds of pasta in the woods.
Is it still there? I want to see it.
I don't know if it is, because it was in 2023, so yeah, it's been a couple of years.
Imagine the cleanup on that. That's so funny.
Well, literally, so the mayor had to make a statement and be like, I don't know why this happened.
I don't know why there's pasta everywhere, my guy.
So, and it, like, they suspected when it was dumped that it was hard because it was hardened when, like, it was dumped and then the rain and stuff, like, softened it, you know?
Things that aren't illegal but feel like they should be. That
dumping pasta in the woods is actually illegal.
I want to do that now.
Oh, this one. Okay, this one's crazy. So I love a good true crimey, and we're getting towards the end of my fun little small bites of craziness. But I kind of love this story format. So if you want to keep doing like this vibe, I'm always down for something like this. But this one's a little crazy because I have a couple that were a little crazy that I have to tell you, Mariah. So the first one starts with Patricia Stallings. She was sentenced in life for poisoning her baby. But the story ended up taking a different type of turn. So in 1989, her infant son, with symptoms that mimicked antifreeze poisoning, she ended up being arrested because people literally thought she was poisoning her child with antifreeze because said child died. But when she was arrested, she was pregnant again and gave birth. And she gave birth in jail. And the second child died again with the same mimicking symptoms. So then they actually started doing autopsies.
That they did. Okay.
Both children were diagnosed with a rare disorder called methylmalonic acidemia, which mimics the same, like, to be poisoned, I guess, like what it would mimic if you were poisoned. And when her first son died, it was never tested properly to actually guarantee that she didn't poison her child and it was actually a rare disorder. So she never actually killed her children. Like,
they arrested her for no fucking reason is what you're telling me.
Yes.
Nice.
Yep.
There you go.
I have to give you at least a couple more because these are just gold. So I have to give you this lottery story. When Tonda Dickerson worked for a Waffle House, and she was, as a tip, she was given instead of like an actual tip in money or anything, she was given a lottery ticket in which she won 10 million. She supposedly orally agreed that she was going to split the winnings with her colleagues. But then when she actually literally won, she was like,
I was going to say, just kidding.
Like, literally, like, no. And she said no contract, no payout, and she kept it all.
I was going to say, that's what you say as, like, you just say it to be nice. I don't know.
Exactly. It's like one of those sentences you say to be nice, but you don't actually mean it.
Yeah. And I agree, no contract when she doesn't owe them fucking anything.
So, the coworkers sued and the tipper sued. Then the IRS sued, claiming she dodged gift taxes by transferring the shares to her family. And years later, she ended up owing over $1 million in taxes. I mean, she still had the 10 million, but she owed at least $1 million she had to give back.
Fucking Uncle Sam.
I know. And then not to mention the women who also, like, not the women. Why am I saying women? She was a woman. The individuals who sued her, like the coworkers and the person who essentially gave her the ticket.
Yeah, well, that was on the person who gave her the ticket because that's a shitty tip most of the time.
I was gonna say, like, yeah, I think
fuck you. You thought that was not gonna win.
And again, these are bite-sized stories, so I didn't look into, like, if she ever paid out those people. So unfortunately, I can't say to that. But last couple stories that I just want to leave you with are: in the freezing rain and in the Russian winter, a cat, because we love a good cat story, saved a baby's life. It was a long-haired street cat who found a newborn baby in a cardboard box. She climbed in, curled up beside the baby, and kept the baby warm with her body heat and fur. She started to meow loudly, and neighbors rushed out and to find, her and the baby. Both the baby and the cat survived, and she became a local hero. Isn't that so cute?
That is very sweet.
We love a good, and she looked like a mancoon. I did look up pictures of her, and she ended up getting, not necessarily adopted, because street cats, I'm sure Mariah, you've had a lot of experience with cats. They're not, like, easy to catch, and they're not always happy inside. Like, sometimes, like, they need to be outside for their well-being.
They are definitely not easy to catch. They do not want to go inside.
Yeah, so, like, I think the cat ended up, like, living the best life. And yeah, so anyway, I'm going to leave you with one more story, which I think is interesting. It's a little dark, but I don't think it's a bad story. I think it shows resilience. So in France, a mother left her 9-year-old son alone in an apartment for 2 years. He survived on cake and canned food and stolen tomatoes. And from 2020 to 2022, the boy lived by himself. No hot water, no consistent meals, and genuinely just occasional visits from his mother, who lived literally 3 miles away with her boyfriend. He kept going to school, however, and every day clean, polite, and a good student. However, the mayor in this France town got suspicious after a food voucher request, and the boy was finally rescued, and the mother was arrested and sent to prison.
After 2 years.
But could you imagine, like, a mother who just leaves their child, like, fucking crazy?
It happens a lot, and
I know it does. It is crazy that it happens.
it's awful.
But anyway, guys, so yeah, those were my cute little. I mean, I have a lot. I could give you the flash round if you want. It is basically like the small, like not even like stories, just like flash round facts.
Well, we only have 6 minutes.
All right, I'll give you a couple flash round facts, and then we'll call it the end. So, okay. There's, just to blow your mind, there's literally something called the tooth and eye surgery, and it's a real procedure where a piece of tooth and a jawbone is used to anchor a prosthetic lens in someone's eye. And yes, people can actually regain sight from this. Crazy.
Interesting.
Here's another little crazy one. And I'll leave you with this. There have been roughly 117 billion people to have ever lived on Earth. So that means for every one human that is alive today, there are about 14 dead. A lot of ghosts. So, what do you think of those, huh? Ever thought that a tooth could make you see and you have 14 ghosts standing behind you?
Okay, well, the ghost is really freaky as fuck. And I don't know, I still don't understand the tooth thing, but
I guess there's like a surgery where they take like a part of your tooth and it can like somehow restore your sight. But it's not like any blind person can walk into the surgery. It's actually a very extensive surgery from what I read, and I guess it's only for people who go blind from specific situations, like, you know, a certain thing that causes blindness. Like, it's not just like your eyes got scratched and you're blind. It's like you were sick and you went blind.
Your tooth can't solve every problem.
I guess not. So anyway, people, we hope you enjoyed this little mini episode, little bite-sized pieces. And we hope that Mariah feels better because we love her dearly. And I'm going to literally kiss her face next time I see her.
I'm just hungry at this point, I'll be honest with you. I'm starving.
I'm starving too. So with that, Mariah, will you give us our lovely outro?
Okay, as always, keep it real, keep it freaky, keep it
naturally.